I'm here with Minute Earth, and since we are talking about dinosaurs today, I thought we'd kick things off with a bang. Boom. Is that good? Is it too loud? Okay, yeah, it's a little loud. Okay, how about this? Much better, dinosaur. Okay, so one thing you should know about dinosaurs is that they lived during the Mesozoic era, which is split into three periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. Now, these time periods are defined by major changes in geology and the fossil record, especially the type of rocks that are found in different areas around the world. Like, this rock is called limestone, and you find a lot of it in the south-central part of the US. It's made when shells and skeletons of marine organisms like coral and algae die and get compressed over time. Now, in the late Triassic period, limestone formed pretty much everywhere, so fossils from that time period are often found in limestone. But during the Jurassic period, mountain building in the west part of Pangaea, which is the supercontinent that existed before all the continents broke up, caused huge amounts of granite to form instead of limestone. So we don't have as many fossils from that time. In general, this is true of the entire Mesozoic era. As Pangaea began to break apart, ocean basins deepened and there was a ton of volcanic activity. So, sedimentary rocks like limestone were no longer the main type of rock forming on land, and fossils became much less common. But back to our story. In the latest period of the Mesozoic era, the Cretaceous, there were so few fossils found that people actually used to think that the Cretaceous period had almost no life at all. Now, this was not true. We just didn't have the technology to find those fossils until recently. For example, the Sahara Desert is covered in sandstone, and that sandstone has preserved bones and footprints of sauropods, which are the same kind of dinosaurs as the famous Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. But when we tried to look for fossils in the Sahara in the 1930s, we couldn't find any because it's a desert. It's super dry. Fossils need to be preserved in sedimentary rocks like limestone, which form in watery environments. And until recently, scientists just assumed that the Sahara had always been a desert. But a paper published in 2017 showed that between 110 and 100 million years ago, the Sahara wasn't a desert. It was a tropical rainforest with rivers and lakes and pools and even an ocean. So researchers went back to the area to look for fossils. And in 2020, they published evidence that they discovered a diverse group of animals, including turtles, crocodiles, fish, and mammals from this time period. And this is really exciting because finding fossils in places like the Sahara that were once tropical but are now deserts is key too. Understanding how climate change is affecting the world today. So a lot of our understanding of dinosaurs comes from the physical evidence that they left behind. Paleontologists look at fossils, of course, but also things like dinosaur poop or coprolites. Chemical signatures in rocks where dinosaurs may have wallowed or bathed, and even ancient insect larvae preserved in amber. These types of evidence give us clues about how dinosaurs lived their lives, and sometimes they tell us stories about their day-to-day lives, like when they ate or how they cared for their young. For example, the coprolite fossil record tells us that Maiasaura, a relative of Ankylosaurus, was most active during the spring and summer, and that the youngest individuals rarely pooped where the adults did. And a study published in 2023 used chemical analysis of fossils to show that Camarasaurus spent time in muddy pools. This is great information, but it's still missing something. Like, we know Camarasaurus hung out in muddy pools, but why? Well, enter paleoecology. While traditional paleontology tends to focus on the identification and classification of fossils, paleoecology focuses on the relationships between ancient organisms and their environment. So paleontologists try to figure out how dinosaurs adapted to their surroundings by looking at everything from their anatomy to their footprints to the chemical signatures of their skin. Plus, they use modern organisms as models to reconstruct past environments. For example, they might compare the physiology of a dinosaur to the physiology of an animal living today that has a similar body plan to see what its life was like. All of this helps us understand the ecology of dinosaurs. Like, we know that Camptosaurus was hanging out in those muddy pools, but we want to know why they did that and what the environment was like when they did it. To do that, we can look at animals today that hang out in muddy pools, like birds. So a group of researchers decided to analyze the feathers of birds that spend time in water, like ducks and geese, and birds that spend more time on land, like ostriches and chickens, to see if they could find chemical signatures that indicated that these birds had spent a lot of time in water. The idea is that the chemistry of a bird's feathers depends on what's around them while they regrowing those feathers, and water tends to have a lot of hydrogen and oxygen. So feathers grown near water have higher ratios of hydrogen to carbon and oxygen to carbon than feathers grown on land. The researchers wanted to know if there was a link between how much time an animal spends in water and the signature of hydrogen and oxygen in their feathers. Turns out there was. They looked at the feathers of museum specimens of Camptosaurus. They found that they had high ratios of hydrogen to carbon and oxygen to carbon. This suggested that they spent some of their time in water, which helped them regulate their body temperature, but they also found that they had lower ratios of sulfur to carbon than other dinosaurs. Sulfur tends to accumulate in tissues like skin and feathers as animals move around on land. So low levels of sulfur could mean that Camptosaurus preferred to spend its time in water. This preference would explain why they congregated around waterholes, why their leg muscles were weaker than other dinosaurs, and why they were such poor walkers. And putting all this evidence together gives us a much richer picture of what it was like to be a Camptosaurus. Like, yeah, it loved to take a dip in the pool. Today, a creature similar to the T-Rex rules the land, but it doesn't spit fire like a dragon. But in the distant past, a fiery dragon ruled the land. Well, maybe not the land, because dragons tend to live in mountains. Well, maybe not mountainous lands, because dragons usually live in caves. Well, okay, maybe not cave-dwelling lands, because dragons are usually isolated and hate everyone. But anyway, this dragon is a wyvern. No, not a wily manatee, a wyvern. And according to legend, wyverns had two heads. Take that, Hydra. Hydra only had 9 heads. Wyverns were all about efficiency, though that's why they had 2 heads. Imagine trying to turn your head twice as far as normal to see what's going on around you. Double the vision, double the efficiency. But having 2 heads came with drawbacks too. Like, how hard is it to share brain space with another head? How do you argue with another head? Does every head get 1 vote when it's time to decide what to eat for dinner? Researchers haven't been able to tackle these questions yet, but they have figured out how two-headed dragons evolved. You see, not all dragons were born with 2 heads. Sometimes they started out as single-headed dragons. Scientists believe that these dragons had a gene called sonic hedgehog, or SHE, which controls head development in embryos. But sometime during evolution, a mutation struck, and in one embryo that SHE gene duplicated. Suddenly, that embryo had 2 SHE genes, and as a result, it grew 2 heads. The problem is that we can't test this hypothesis because, well, dragons aren't real. Or are they? Well, not this one. This is Yoshi. Yoshi is a genetically modified axolotl that has 2 heads. Axolotls are amphibians related to salamanders. They normally develop 4 newts, but sometimes the expression of that very same SHE gene causes them to grow 2 heads. Scientists used genome editing to change the way that gene is expressed in axolotl embryos. And that's how they grew Yoshi, who is doing great. She's happy, healthy, and ready to help scientists learn more about how dragons evolved. If you like dinosaurs, then you'll love this playlist. Dinosaurs are cool. Like, seriously, check it out. There's all kinds of stuff in there. You can watch it right now. Come on, let's go. Hey, what's happening? I'm here. And I bet you didn't realize you could learn all about dinosaurs and other extinct animals with Minute Earth. But you can. You can discover incredible facts about ancient creatures from saber-toothed cats to trilobites with our digital magazine. Available on iOS and Android. Each issue is jam-packed with awesome interactives and illustrations, and we add new articles every week. My favorite recent article is called Feathered, Ferocious, and Fully Evolved. It looks at the discovery of a feathered dino-like Archaeopteryx and explores whether it was a descendant of birds or a dinosaur. I won't spoil it for you, but dang, it's a good one. I think you'll love it. So come on, don't be shy. Click the link below and get a subscription today. You'll get unlimited access to all of our digital magazines and websites. It's a great deal. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out.